Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be diving into a paper that's really making waves in the AI community.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Linear Diffusion Networks, Harnessing Diffusion Processes for Global Interactions.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is, but it's pretty fascinating stuff.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So, imagine if you could reimagine data processing as a diffusion process.
Yeah.
Like watching information spread through a network. That's kind of what linear diffusion networks, or LDNs, are all about. And they're really poised to be a game changer.
Yeah, I've been hearing whispers about these LDNs, and from what I gather, they're offering a really fresh perspective on sequence modeling.
Yeah.
Addressing those limitations we've been wrestling with for ages, RNNs, even transformers, LDNs seem to be tackling those head on.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty fascinating approach.
So in the first minute, let's give our viewers a super concise snapshot of what makes LDNs so groundbreaking.
Okay.
Why are they generating so much buzz in the AI world? Basically, they're presenting a possible alternative to those traditional approaches for handling sequential data, like you were saying, RNNs, transformers.
Right. And
they're doing this by really tackling those challenges of parallelization and long-range dependency.
Absolutely. It's like, RNNs, they process information step by step, which can create a bottleneck. Yeah. It can slow things down, make it tough to keep track of information that appeared earlier in the sequence, especially when you've got these really long sequences.
Exactly.
Transformers, they try to get around this with their attention mechanism, but they can be computationally expensive,
Yeah, they can get pretty heavy.
LDNs, on the other hand, they're offering a more streamlined and efficient way to capture both the local and the global context.
Right.
And this opens up a whole world of possibilities for things like natural language processing, time series forecasting, you name it.
Absolutely. And it really is fundamental to so many different areas of AI, this sequence modeling.
Oh, absolutely. It's the bedrock of so many applications.
So before we get too deep into the weeds of how LDNs actually work, let's set the stage a little bit for our viewers.
Okay.
Why is sequence modeling such a crucial concept in AI? And why are researchers constantly on this quest to find better ways to do it?
Well, it's all about, the world is full of sequences.
Right.
Whether we're talking about understanding the order of words in a sentence, for natural language processing, or analyzing patterns in stock prices over time for financial forecasting, being able to model these sequences, it's the key to unlocking insights, making accurate predictions. Without it, AI systems would be operating in this chaotic jumble of data, unable to extract those meaningful patterns and relationships that really govern the real world.
Yeah, it's like trying to understand a story, but reading the words in a totally random order.
Exactly.
You'd miss the plot, the character development.
You'd miss the whole point.
Exactly. Yeah. So traditional RNNs, particularly those LSTMs, they've been the real workhorses for sequence modeling.
They really have.
But they have their drawbacks, right?
They do.
Processing information sequentially, like we were saying, can be slow.
Right.
And then you have those vanishing gradients.
The vanishing gradients.
Yeah, it can make it really difficult to capture those long-range dependencies.
It's like, trying to remember a detail from the first chapter of a book after you've already finished reading the whole thing.
Right.
The further you go back, the harder it is to recall those important details.
Exactly, like that crucial clue that seemed totally insignificant at the beginning.
Yeah.
But it turns out to be the key to solving the whole mystery.
Exactly.
So you have transformers that come along with this self-attention mechanism, which is really neat.
It's ingenious, really.
That offers a way to kind of look back at those important parts of the sequence.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, they can get computationally expensive.
Oh, they can, especially when you're dealing with those really long sequences.
Exactly. So how do these LDNs kind of fit into this puzzle?
Well, they're offering this fresh perspective, right? By approaching sequence modeling from a completely different angle, and that's the concept of diffusion.
Okay.
Imagine, dropping a dye into a glass of water.
Okay.
And watching how the color gradually spreads throughout the entire volume.
Oh, okay.
That's diffusion in action.
Yeah.
And LDNs, they apply the same principle to the flow of information within a neural network.
Interesting.
Allowing data to spread across all time steps simultaneously.
Okay, so instead of processing it step by step, it's more like letting it flow through the entire network.
Exactly. It's like permeating, like a scent diffusing through a room.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, so you're not just processing it bit by bit, you're letting it kind of wash over the entire network.
That sounds incredibly efficient. But how do you make sure that the network doesn't just become this blurry mess?
Right. That's the key question.
With everything getting blended together,
Yeah.
how do you retain that distinct information?
That's where the real beauty of LDNs comes in, I think. They have these three key components that work together
Okay.
to strike this elegant balance between spreading information globally and preserving those local details.
Okay.
First, you have these adaptable diffusion modules,
Okay.
and they control how quickly information spreads through the network.
Okay.
It's kind of like, adjusting the flow rate of that dye in our water analogy.
Okay, so it's not just this free-for-all of information spreading everywhere all at once.
No.
There's a control mechanism
There's control, there's nuance.
that kind of governs this diffusion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating is that this flow rate, if you will,
Yeah.
it can be learned by the network itself during training.
Oh, wow.
So it adapts to the specific characteristics of the data it's processing.
That's pretty cool. So the network is actually figuring out the best way to spread this information based on what it's learning.
Precisely, it's learning and adapting on the fly, which is pretty remarkable.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What about the other two components?
Right, so
How do they play into this kind of delicate dance of diffusion and detail?
So the second component is what we call localized nonlinear updates.
Okay.
Think of these as fine-tuning mechanisms
Okay.
that operate on individual time steps.
Hmm.
Ensuring that while information is being spread globally, we're not losing those crucial details at each individual step.
Okay.
It's like making sure that the dye doesn't just wash out the original colors completely.
Right. So it's kind of like having this global view from a satellite image,
Mm-hmm.
but then also having someone on the ground telling you exactly what's happening at specific locations.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You get the big picture,
You get both.
but you also retain those important nuances.
Exactly. You need both.
Okay, what about the third component?
All right, so the third component is the diffusion-inspired attention mechanism.
Oh.
Now, even with diffusion helping to capture these global dependencies,
Yeah.
sometimes the network needs a more direct way to focus on specific parts of the sequence,
Okay.
right? This attention mechanism allows the network to selectively highlight and weigh different parts of the sequence based on their relevance.
So it's like a spotlight.
Exactly. It's like shining a spotlight
That's really cool.
on those crucial parts of the sequence.
Okay, so it's like the network is saying, okay, I've got this overall understanding from the diffusion,
Right.
but now I want to focus on this particular part
Yeah,
because it seems really important.
right.
And that's all happening dynamically based on what it's learning.
Exactly. It's dynamic, it's context aware, it's really quite remarkable.
That's amazing. So it's like the network is saying, I see you, important piece of information. I'm going to give you the attention you deserve.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we've covered the diffusion modules.
Right.
We've got those local updates.
Yes.
And we've got that attention mechanism.
The three pillars of LDNs.
These three components working together to create this really elegant and efficient system
It's a beautiful synergy.
for processing sequential data.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier this global dependency theorem,
Ah, yes.
which seems to be this really crucial piece of why LDNs are so effective.
It's foundational, really.
Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Sure.
What does this theorem actually say, and
Yeah.
why is it so important?
So the global dependency theorem, it's this fascinating piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
It basically provides mathematical proof that the diffusion process in LDNs, it's not just spreading information randomly.
Okay.
It guarantees that every single output is influenced by every single input, no
Wow.
matter how far apart they are in the sequence.
Really?
Yeah,
That's incredible.
it's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
That's amazing. So it's not just these local interactions between neighboring time steps.
No,
It's actually about capturing those long-range dependencies.
it's about the big picture.
That can be so crucial
Absolutely crucial.
for understanding the full context.
the whole story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the implications of that for the performance of LDNs?
Well, I think that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Well, it means that LDNs are truly considering the whole sequence, the whole story, when making decisions, not just a small window of information like traditional RNNs might. And I think that's really powerful.
Absolutely. It's got to have a significant impact on their ability to handle these more complex tasks that require that understanding of the broader context.
It's like having a long-term memory, you know? They can remember those crucial details from earlier in the sequence and use them to inform their decisions later on.
It's like they're reading the whole book, not just skimming a couple of pages.
Exactly. And that's a game changer for a lot of AI applications.
So we've got this really solid theoretical foundation,
Yeah.
this global dependency theorem, backing them up. But how does that actually translate into real-world performance?
Yeah, that's the ultimate test, right?
Exactly, and the paper mentioned all these different experiments that they did to really put LDNs through their paces.
They did. They really wanted to see how they stacked up against the competition.
Can you walk us through some of the highlights? What were some of the key findings from those experiments?
Sure. So they evaluated LDNs on a whole range of tasks, from image classification to natural language processing.
Okay.
And the results were really impressive, to say the least.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's start with image classification.
Okay.
They tested LDNs on ImageNet, which is this massive data set of images that's kind of the gold standard for benchmarking image classification models.
Right, it's like the ultimate proving ground.
Exactly, and you know what? They found that LDNs outperformed the vision transformer, or VIT, which has become a pretty popular baseline for image classification tasks.
Wait, so you're telling me that LDNs, which are designed for sequence modeling,
Yeah.
were able to outperform a model that's specifically designed for image classification?
That's right, they went head-to-head with a model designed for images and came out on top.
How is that even possible?
Well, remember how we talked about the adaptability of the diffusion kernel?
Yeah.
It turns out that this adaptability allows LDNs to learn those spatial relationships within images by treating the pixels as a sequence.
Oh, so they're kind of transforming the image into a sequence of pixels and then applying their sequence modeling magic to that.
Exactly. It's like they're reading the image pixel by pixel, but in a way that captures the overall structure and meaning of the image.
That's really clever. So they're not limited to just text or time series data. They can handle images too.
And not only did they achieve higher accuracy, but they did it with fewer parameters and lower computational cost.
So they're more efficient as well. That's impressive.
It's a win-win, better performance with less effort.
Yeah, that's always a good combination.
Absolutely. But images are one thing. How did they handle the complexities of human language?
Right, because language is so nuanced and full of those long-range dependencies that can be really hard for models to grasp.
Exactly. So to evaluate their performance on natural language processing tasks,
They pre-trained LDNs on a massive text data set, similar to how those popular language models like BERT and Roberta are trained.
right, so they're kind of giving them a crash course in the structure and patterns of human language.
Exactly, and then they fine-tuned these pre-trained LDNs on several tasks from the GLUE benchmark.
Okay, and just to remind our viewers, GLUE, that stands for General Language Understanding Evaluation.
Right, it's a collection of diverse NLP tasks designed to assess a model's ability to understand and reason about language.
So things like sentiment analysis, question answering, figuring out if two sentences mean the same thing.
All those tricky things that really require a deep understanding of language.
Exactly. So how did LDNs do on those tasks?
Well, they performed competitively with, and in some cases even surpassed, BERT and Roberta.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, especially on tasks that required more complex reasoning and an understanding of those long-range dependencies within the text.
It seems like their ability to capture those long-range dependencies, as guaranteed by the global dependency theorem, is really paying off.
It's giving them a significant advantage in these more challenging NLP tasks.
Absolutely. It's like they're finally able to connect the dots, to see how all those pieces of the puzzle fit together.
They're seeing the forest and the trees.
I love that analogy. It's so fitting.
Yeah, it really captures the essence of what LDNs are doing.
So we've seen them perform well on images. They're holding their own against the big dogs in NLP. It seems like this diffusion-based approach is really versatile.
It's a powerful tool that can be applied to a wide range of tasks.
But they didn't just stop at evaluating the overall performance. They also wanted to understand the contribution of each individual component.
Right. They wanted to know what makes these networks tick.
So they conducted those ablation studies, which is a really common technique in machine learning, to figure out the importance of different parts of a model.
It's like taking the engine apart to see how each piece contributes to making the car go.
And that's exactly what they did with LDNs.
They systematically removed each of the three main components: the diffusion modules, the localized nonlinear updates, and the diffusion-inspired attention mechanism.
And what did they learn? Was there one magic ingredient, or is it the synergy of all three working together that makes these networks so effective?
Well, the results were pretty clear. Removing any of the three components led to a noticeable drop in performance across various tasks.
So it's not just one hero, it's the whole team working together.
Exactly. It's the interplay between these three components that allows LDNs to achieve those impressive results.
So we've got this really elegant design, strong theoretical foundations, impressive empirical results. It seems like LDNs have a lot to offer the world of AI.
They're a game changer, no doubt about it.
But like any new approach, they must have some limitations, right?
Right.
What are some of the areas where further research might be needed?
You're always thinking critically. I like that.
Got to keep them honest, right?
Exactly. And you're right. While LDNs show great promise, it's still early days. More exploration is needed to fully understand their behavior and to fine-tune their performance even further.
So what are some of the open questions? What are the researchers still trying to figure out?
Well, for example, exploring more sophisticated attention mechanisms or developing adaptive strategies for optimizing those diffusion kernel parameters could lead to even better results.
So it sounds like we're just at the beginning of the LDN journey.
We're just scratching the surface.
There's still so much to explore and discover.
Absolutely. The possibilities are endless. It's a really exciting time to be working in this area, with so much potential for breakthroughs.
Yeah, and this whole idea that every output is influenced by every input, that's a pretty big deal, right?
It's huge. It means that LDNs aren't just looking at a small window of information like some traditional models might.
Right.
They're really taking in the whole picture, and that has to have a significant impact on their ability to handle those complex tasks, especially the ones that require that deep understanding of the broader context.
So it's not just theoretical, right? This global dependency theorem, it actually translates into real-world performance gains.
Oh, absolutely. They're not just pretty on paper, they actually deliver.
And the paper does mention a whole bunch of experiments that they conducted.
Oh yeah, they really put these LDNs through the ringer.
To really see how they stacked up.
They wanted to see what they were capable of.
Can you walk us through some of the key findings from those experiments?
Sure. So they evaluated LDNs on a variety of tasks, like we talked about, image classification, natural language processing, really put them through their paces.
So let's start with image classification.
Okay.
How did they perform on that?
Well, they tested LDNs on ImageNet, which, as you know, is that massive data set of images used to benchmark image classification models.
Right, it's kind of like the gold standard for image classification.
It's the proving ground.
Exactly.
And guess what?
Right.
They found that LDNs actually outperformed the vision transformer, or VIT, which has become a very popular baseline for image classification tasks.
Hold on. So you're saying that LDNs, which are designed for sequence modeling, were able to beat a model that was specifically designed for image classification?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
That's pretty amazing.
It is, isn't it?
How is that even possible?
Well, remember we talked about the adaptability of that diffusion kernel?
Right.
It turns out that this adaptability allows LDNs to really effectively learn those spatial relationships within images by treating the pixels as a sequence.
Oh, okay. So they're kind of transforming the image into a sequence of pixels.
Exactly.
And then applying their sequence modeling magic to that.
That's exactly right. It's like they're reading the image pixel by pixel, but in a way that captures the overall structure and the meaning of the image.
That's really clever. So they're not just limited to text or time series data. They can handle images as well.
They're showing real versatility.
Yeah, and they're doing it efficiently too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Not only did they achieve higher accuracy on ImageNet, but they do it with fewer parameters.
Wow.
And lower computational costs.
So they're more accurate, they're more efficient.
It's a win-win.
That's a fantastic combination.
It is, isn't it? Better performance with less effort.
But images are one thing, right? How did LDNs handle the complexities of human language?
That's a great question.
Because language is so nuanced.
It is full of subtleties.
And so full of these long-range dependencies.
Yeah, those dependencies that can be really tricky for models to grasp.
To really understand.
So, to evaluate their performance on natural language processing tasks, they did something really interesting.
Okay.
They pre-trained LDNs on this massive text data set, similar to how those popular language models like BERT and Roberta are trained.
Right, so they're giving them kind of a crash course in the structure and the patterns of human language.
Exactly. It's like sending them to language school.
Okay.
And then they fine-tuned these pre-trained LDNs on several tasks from the GLUE benchmark.
Right, and GLUE, That stands for General Language Understanding Evaluation. It's a collection of diverse NLP tasks that are designed to assess a model's ability to understand and to reason about language.
Exactly. Can it handle the nuances? Can it understand the subtleties?
Things like sentiment analysis, question answering, figuring out if two sentences mean the same thing, tasks that really require the model to kind of get what we're saying as humans.
Exactly. It's about reading between the lines, so to speak.
And how did LDNs do on these tasks?
Well, they did remarkably well. They performed competitively with, and in some cases even surpassed, BERT and Roberta.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is, especially on those tasks that required more complex reasoning and an understanding of those long-range dependencies within text.
It seems like that ability to capture those long-range dependencies, which the global dependency theorem guarantees, really giving them an edge.
It's a game changer in those challenging NLP tasks.
It really is. It's like they're able to connect the dots.
Right.
See how everything fits together.
See the big picture.
Yeah, not just looking at these small fragments of information.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we've seen them perform well on images. They're holding their own against the big dogs in NLP. It seems like this diffusion-based approach is incredibly versatile.
It's a powerful tool with a lot of potential applications.
But they didn't just stop there, right? They also conducted ablation studies to figure out the contribution of each individual component.
They want to understand what makes these LDNs tick, right? What's driving that performance.
So they systematically removed each of the three main components: the diffusion modules, the localized nonlinear updates, and the diffusion-inspired attention mechanism.
One by one to isolate the impact of each.
So what did they learn? Was there one secret ingredient, or is it really the synergy of all three working together?
Well, the results were pretty clear. Removing any of the three components actually led to a noticeable drop in performance across those various tasks.
So it's not just one hero.
No.
It's the whole team.
It's the team effort that matters.
Working together.
It's the interplay between all three that gives LDNs their power.
So we've got this elegant design. We've got strong theoretical foundations.
The global dependency theorem backing it up.
And we've got impressive empirical results.
They've got the brains and the brawn.
It's safe to say that LDNs have a lot to offer the world of AI.
They're changing the game, no doubt about it.
But like any new approach, there must be some limitations, right?
Of course, there's always room for improvement.
What are some areas where we need further research? What are the researchers still trying to figure out?
Well, for example, exploring more sophisticated attention mechanisms or developing adaptive strategies for optimizing those diffusion kernel parameters could lead to even better results.
So it sounds like we're really just at the beginning of this LDN journey.
You're just scratching the surface.
There's so much more to explore and discover.
Absolutely. The possibilities are endless.
It's a really exciting time to be witnessing these kinds of advancements in AI.
It really is a golden age for AI research.
LDNs have definitely caught our attention.
They've captured the imagination of the whole field.
And we're eager to see how they evolve and what new frontiers they'll help us conquer in the years to come.
I can't wait to see what the future holds for LDNs. It's going to be fascinating.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into linear diffusion networks.
It was a pleasure diving in with you.
We hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we did.
And if you want to learn more, be sure to check out the full paper. The link is in the description below.
And as always, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
Until next time.